It's a busy weekend here in Columbus, Ohio. It's Father's Day weekend, it's Columbus Pride, and it's also Juneteenth. And I hope all of you, however or whatever you choose to celebrate, will do so safely. I received a call from a good friend of mine a number of weeks ago who said, "Hey man, are you doing a special liturgy for Pride weekend since it is that in Columbus?" I thought for a second and said, "Well, actually we're not. We're just following the standard worship order in the church calendar." I said that it's my practice that we follow the liturgical calendar and therefore don't celebrate a number of things such as 4th of July or Thanksgiving because these are not church holidays or festivals, and that's how we make that decision. He thought for a second and said, "Well, don't you think that it would be a good idea that one Sunday a year to let all people know that they are welcome and it is a safe and inclusive space?" It didn't take me long to respond, "Well, I actually think that's important to let people know 52 Sundays out of a year, every time we gather for worship, that the church is a sanctuary from the world outside for all people, regardless of color or age or orientation or any of those sorts of things. And we have a statement saying just that printed on the inside of each and every one of our bulletins." Though with that being said, in our gospel reading today, from the Gospel of Matthew, the 9th and 10th chapter, it does reference the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And I think that on this Sunday, it would be an appropriate use of this time to walk through and talk about the biblical story of Sodom and Gomorrah, what we learn about it in the words of Genesis, where this story is, and maybe hold that into comparison with what we think the city is about or what we've told ourselves that Sodom and Gomorrah is about. Sodom and Gomorrah is first mentioned, or Sodom specifically is first mentioned in the book of Genesis in chapter 10. And so to start with our exposition of the city of Sodom, I'm going to start with the story of Noah's Ark. I know you know the story of Noah's Ark. God looks at the world and the world is wicked. God says, "I'm going to destroy humanity. I'm going to wipe away the wickedness." Then God sees Noah and Noah's family, has a conversation, tells him to build the ark, and then Noah and his family get on the ark and the rains come and the rain wipes away the people. Now, the people on the ark, according to Genesis, are 8. It's Noah, his 3 sons, and their 4 wives. They are the ones on the ark. Noah had 3 sons, Japheth, Ham, and Shem. And as we read through the genealogy of Noah's family, the family of Ham ends up in the region of Sodom. The first reference of Sodom in the 10th chapter of Genesis is pointing to the area that the descendants of Ham live in. Now, from that point, we don't have Sodom mentioned again until Genesis 13, when we find ourselves in the Abraham story. Abraham has a sibling who passes away, and so Abraham raises and lives in community with his nephew, Lot. As Abraham and Lot are moving through, both of their camps, if you will, get very large. That is, those who are traveling with Abraham and those who are traveling with Lot. And so they end up in the Jordan Plain looking at the river, and Abraham says to Lot, "Our combined army is too great. Let's split up. You take one side of the river, I'll take the other side of the river, and that way there will be enough resources for all of our people." Lot chooses the side with Sodom, and Genesis, the narrator, tells us that he picked Sodom and it was a wicked city. This is the first of many references to Sodom as simply a wicked city. It's a way to let us, the readers or the hearers of Genesis, know that Lot made the wrong decision. But regardless, Abraham goes to his side and Lot goes to his side. In the next chapter, in chapter 14, the kings of Sodom, along with the kings of Gomorrah and other kings in that territory, are attacked by armies that are around their area and encroaching upon them. It's there in Genesis chapter 14 that Abraham sends soldiers, he sends armies to help protect and save the territories of Sodom and Gomorrah and those that are being attacked by other ones. Abraham saves Sodom and Gomorrah and those other territories because Lot and his encampment is there, and it's important to protect and care for family. This is all in Genesis chapters 13 and 14. And we don't hear about Sodom again until Genesis in the 18th chapter. In the 18th chapter, we come across the familiar story of Abraham and Sarah in their tent when they have 3 divine visitors. These representations of God, or angels, or God and 2 angels, we can argue this a number of different ways, but they arrive, and Abraham and Sarah welcome them to sit down and share a meal. It's in this conversation between the 3 divine visitors and Abraham that they say by the next time they come around, Sarah will be pregnant. Sarah hears this from inside the tent and laughs. This is the joke that their child, Isaac, his name translates to giggles. Because who are we to laugh at God's plan? God's plan will always happen. After this interaction, Abraham speaks to one of the 3 divine visitors, the one that we see as being God. And God seems to hesitate for a moment to tell Abraham that God is sending or on God's way to destroy the wicked cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. The hesitation here is that is still where Lot and his family live, and that means that it impacts Abraham's family. This is where Abraham argues with God. But God, what happens if you find 100 righteous people in Sodom? Will you forgive that city then and let them off the hook? God replies, well, for 100 people, sure. Well, what about 90 people, God? What happens if you find 90 people? Will you let Sodom off the hook? God says yes. What about 80? Is 80 okay? And God again says yes. Abraham responds, well, not to push the issue too much. What about 40 people? If you find 40 people, would you let them off the hook? God agrees to 40, then 30, then 20, then 10. God says if he finds 10 righteous people in the city of Sodom, that Sodom will be spared. Just as, again, a point of reference, there were only 8 righteous people on the ark in the Noah story. Noah and his 3 sons and their 4 wives. So the number of righteous people needed to save Sodom is too higher than that of the people saved in the Noah story. But nonetheless, that is kind of where the deal is left. God ascends, and in the next verse, the other 2 divine visitors, those other 2 angels, leave the tent of Abraham and Sarah and make their way to Sodom. When they get to Sodom, they go to the house of Lot, because they had just been with Abraham, and like any of us, when you travel to a new town, you find people you know, or people who you know people that you know, people that will show you hospitality. They get to Lot's house and knock on the door and are welcomed in by Lot and his family. However, it's walking through the city of Sodom that some locals saw these travelers, these outsiders, these aliens, these people they didn't know. And being aggressive and being angry, these citizens of Sodom had that mentality of domination, saying, well, who are these travelers? Where do you get off coming here? And there was anger, and there was rage, and there was aggression, and there was the need to prove that this was their city, and that visitors weren't welcome, that this is their territory, and they are the alphas. To be honest, we see this kind of tribalism or hyper-aggression depicted in many movies and TV shows about prison, where new people come into a prison system and whomever the alpha is attacks them violently, often sexually, in scenes where the camera will pan away in a shower or whatnot. And this is the situation that is playing out. This group of regulars, of people who lived in the city of Sodom, saw these people that they did not recognize and went after to forcibly exert their dominance on them, with no consent, with no hospitality, with no care for who they were, only with the desire to prove their power. And so they bang on the door, and they demand that Lot hand over these visitors. Lot offers other options. Lot knows that in a hospitality-centered culture, his primary task is to protect his visitors and show them a good time. But the angry and aggressive crowd is unrelenting, and they say, "We want them, give them to us." But then there is a bright light, and Lot and his family and the two angels escape and make their way out of the situation. As they move, there's the event with Lot's wife, but eventually they end up on a hill overlooking the city of Sodom, and the angels, the divine visitors, rain down fire, which wipes away the wicked city. There's one point I would like to make as an aside at this point, and that is the importance of words and their nuance. So when I was learning about the 10 Commandments, my father would always say to me, there's the 3 at the front and then the 7 thou shalt nots. That's how you remember the 10 Commandments. And if you were trained with a similar confirmation or Sunday school curriculum as I had as a kid, you were probably taught that one of the 10 Commandments is thou shalt not kill. However, that's not 100% correct. See, if the 10 Commandments said literally, thou shalt not kill, then no Christian nor practicing Jew should be in the military or eat meat of any kind, because that would be to kill. What it says is thou shalt not murder, because with murder comes an intent. Murder versus kill changes what it is we are talking about in a number of ways. And so when we look at the violently sexual act that the crowd was threatening to the divine visitors, it entailed with it a lack of respect, a lack of consent, a lack of hospitality, and a desire for power and aggression and rage and domination. The other thing I'd like to point out, and this is going back to the Noah story, is this. When we look at the Noah story, what we find is God looks at the world, says things are wicked, decides that God is going to wipe away humanity, has a relationship with the family of Noah. They get in the ark, and then God sends the rain, which brings the flood to wipe away humanity, with Noah's family making their way through it. In the story of Lot and his family, God looks at Sodom and Gomorrah and identifies the wickedness of a city. Abraham then argues God from finding 100 righteous people down to 10. There's a relationship with Lot's family, and then it is fire that is rained down to wipe away the wickedness of the people. Now, what's interesting, I think, is that the event in Noah's Ark, that is the straw that breaks the camel's back, beyond the general wickedness of the people, is specifically the Nephilim, these angels of a degree, these sons of God, as they're called, coming down from on high and laying with the daughters of man. So we have these sons of God with the daughters of men, and between the two of them are these kind of half-human, half-angel offspring running around as the pinnacle event. That is, as I said, the straw to break the camel's back. That is what sets off the flood, despite all the wickedness of humanity. However, when we teach and talk about Noah's Ark, we always kind of gloss over that part and simply say, it's because the world is wicked that God sent the flood. And yet, when we get to the story of Lot's family here in Sodom, despite the fact that for chapters 13 and 14 and then 18 and 19, over and over, Sodom is called generally a wicked city. In this event, we overlook the general wickedness and want to focus in on the aggressive behavior of one crowd in one incident that actually goes unfulfilled because Lot and his family escape. Why is it that in the Noah story, we look at the general wickedness and accept that people are generally bad, overlooking the specific? But yet in the Lot story, we overlook the general wickedness of the city and seem to specifically focus on this one event. Something else I find interesting is this. In the early parts of the Old Testament, from Genesis 1 all the way through Genesis 19, Sodom is mentioned 21 times, often as a geographical touchstone to say where so-and-so's descendants moved, or to say this country to the east or west or north or south of Sodom, or to refer to it as a wicked city, or to tell us the story of Lot and his family. After the 19th chapter of Genesis, according to Nelson's exhaustive concordance, Sodom is mentioned 27 times, often still for geography to orientate the reader, often to refer to it as a wicked place, most often to point to God's destruction of that city, as when prophets in the Old Testament say, "Oh, woe, it was so bad in Sodom, but worse will happen to you," meaning that God will destroy absolutely every bit of your city if you do not turn around. Though there is the prophet Ezekiel, who, comparing the wickedness to Jerusalem, says Jerusalem is worse than Sodom, and that God will restore Sodom. But even beyond that, what we see in those 27 occurrences or references of Sodom after Genesis 19 is a warning against being inhospitable or treating travelers badly. That's how we get to today's gospel from Matthew, the 9th and 10th chapter. Jesus has named the 12 apostles and sent them with the power to exorcise demons and raise the dead and cure the sick. Jesus is speaking to them in this passage of ministry and motion, sending them out, telling them that if you go into a town and give your peace and it is returned to you, then let your peace rest on those homes. But if you give your peace and it is not returned to you, brush the dust off your feet and keep walking. Do not subject yourself to abuse of any kind, but keep moving. For it would be worse for that city than for Sodom and Gomorrah, if that were the case. They would receive a worse punishment than that city that exercised such horrible hospitality as threatening to attack and dominate visitors. Friends, I feel like this is our call out of the Sodom and Gomorrah story. Our call is not to persecute or judge. Our call is to love the neighbor as ourselves, to care for the alien, and to be outpost of the kingdom of God as we meet our fellow travelers along the way. My prayer for each and every one of us, every Sunday of the year and every day of the year, is to do just that. May we be so brave. Amen.